Okay, so I'm probably gonna sound kind of sick because I'm staying indoors and I get sick building syndrome pretty easily. But I'm not really gonna go into that. I've been wanting to make this video and I think I've somewhat mentioned some of this stuff a couple times before. But something that I've realized, and I don't know how to put it, I know a lot of people may feel some type of way about this if anybody even watches this. But like, I already, where do I even start? Okay, so I mention pretty often that I started researching things at 6, more so like 7, 8, about MK Ultra, and I was always interested in like researching the fallen angels, Anunnaki, the end times, Revelation, all that stuff. And I had already realized pretty young that the things that I had found out about were already things that like weren't liked in the mainstream church, I guess I could say. Like a lot of religious people, they don't really believe the Bible, they don't believe in the supernatural. People don't really think the end times is gonna happen. Like I realized at 8 from the constant September 23rd mess that a lot of people believe in a pre-tribulation rapture. What else was it? Oh yeah, I only recently realized how much people don't believe that like America is Babylon and it's gonna fall. I only recently found out within the past, I don't know, 2 years or so how controversial that is to the American church. And the point is, like, oh yeah, then the deliverance thing as well, like how many people in the church, I already said don't believe in the supernatural, but also don't really believe in demons, or don't believe that people can have demons, or they believe that like you only need deliverance if you don't believe in God, which wouldn't even really make sense on why you would even be getting deliverance if you don't believe in God. Or what's the thing that people say? You can't have the Holy Spirit and have spirits, even though like the number one reason for demonization, especially in the West, is child abuse. So there was that, and I'm hoping that this is going to make sense. But then like, I'm trying to like get to a point, because it's like I just realized that one, you go through more spiritual warfare, but also there really isn't like a place for you to be at if you already like believe in the Bible and stuff really young. Especially if your parents don't and you're in like a really bad situation. Because like, for example, I talk about sometimes, although I didn't want to mention it really on these channels, because I tried to like not mention anything like that I guess is personal, but it's like the things that I've just found out and pieced together through different things that I have been through and am going through. It's hard to not mention it, because like I've just realized so much, I've just realized so much due to the different things I have had or do have going on. And so anyways, I mentioned how like I escaped my cash for kids system abuse and all that. How long ago was that at this point? Maybe like a year plus ago? I don't know. It wasn't that long ago. And so like due to that, I'm, I guess I could say full-blown quote-unquote homeless, although I don't like the term. But I was more so like hidden homeless before, but I guess now I'm full-blown visibly homeless. And then also I'm a street kid. And then, of course, since I escaped my cash for kids system abuse and the human cash cow systems, I'm also a quote-unquote runaway as well. And so, like, it's a lot of stuff that I mentioned before. Like, I already like found out about a lot of things that is controversial in like the regular churches. And also, as I mentioned before, my parents didn't believe in, well, they don't believe in God. And so there's also that. So like, I also wasn't even in church that much. I didn't get to go that much, even if I wanted to really know how controversial a lot of things are. Like, for example, now of course Kanye's MK Ultra controlled opposition, but I didn't know how controversial it was to mention who the real true Yasharel were until people flipped out over the Kanye thing. And that's been like caused issues ever since, to where anybody who knows real history or has like any type of ethnic origin is all of a sudden accused of being a part of BHI, as if BHI is some new organization, which if I already know the bull crap of the other religious organizations and the mainstream churches, I don't know why I joined BHI or really any other organization. They're all the same as far as I care. But there's that. I didn't know how controversial that was until recently. What point was I getting at? Oh yeah, so like homeless people aren't allowed in churches. So that's one thing. And then also another thing with it is that I even learned before I became homeless that like if you're a kid and your parents don't believe in God and like you go to church but like you believe in the Bible, it also causes like some issues because people, they don't really want to have anything to do with you because they don't want to get accused of anything, or for your parents to like feel some type of way about like you talking to them about even the Bible or anything. It's a lot of weird stuff with that. But also, especially recently, I'm constantly reminded that I'm not seen the same. I'm just seen as like a fast-grown child, quote-unquote, who's being bad and is disobeying parents. On top of the fact that churches wouldn't want me around or inside or near them anyways and would call the police due to one, racial stuff with the white ones, and then with the black ones, more so the whole you're being fast and grown thing and like where are your parents at and all that. And so like, I mean, it was kind of expected, especially after escaping the Ramco systems. But, like, a lot of people, they just don't get it. And it's like, a lot of people may feel like, oh, well, I know my church is different. Try to go to your church, but while being homeless, or, in fact, maybe even go to a church you've never been to before, but pretend to be homeless. Or especially pretend to be a homeless kid. And, like, you'll just get 911 calls. Maybe, crap, I've even seen a pastor hit a dude in the head back in Oregon. And I was just walking down the street. And I wasn't even necessarily homeless then, but it's like, as I've talked about before, it's homeless energy, which is pretty much like an energy that you don't have parents or family. That's really what that is. So, like, it's not even about looking a certain way or any of that. Because homeless youth typically don't look like the stereotype. And as far as the white addict projection, only in certain places is there like a lot of drug stuff going on. And there's still a racial side to that as well. So that's not even like the stereotype in a lot of places. The stereotype in some places isn't for you to like be on substances or look like you're on substances. It's just like, I don't know, being outside all the time, but it's not even just that though. Like someone once told me, it's the energy you give off, which is unfortunate. But yeah, like, try to go to a church while being homeless or looking homeless, or just tell them you're homeless, and you'll see how quick the police get called, or they tell you to leave or whatever in the world, or they start trying to take advantage of you. And another thing, as I mentioned pretty often, is that church and state was never separated. The pagan Roman Catholic Church, which are the Freemasons and the Shriners and all that, they still run everything. They're a 501c3 organization. they own all the homeless help organizations. So they're all run by religious people, more so. And I've ran into so much chomo situations behind these different religious priest type dudes coming out to quote unquote help the homeless. And luckily I haven't been R-worded, but it's like a constant avoidance of it, I could also say. Because, like, so many of these, like, of course, priest dudes and these just different religious dudes, if they're not treating you like crap, they're trying to, like, molest you and manipulate you and stuff like that. And, I don't really know how else to put it. It's like when you're not in, like, the most ideal situations and you're young and you believe in God and the Bible, but you're also in a situation that makes, like, church people feel like, oh, you're just one of those, like, crazy homeless people, or you're just one of those crazy conspiracy theory people that believe stuff that isn't allowed in the mainstream church. It's just like, there's nowhere for, well, you don't fit into the religious organizations, and it's already a known fact that a lot of people have been talking about, that the true followers of the way don't go to churches because the church people don't like them. And, like, I noticed that really often people try to say, oh, it's just, like, a pride thing or a delusional thing when you think that way, that, like, the church is dangerous. But honestly, especially when you, like, when you're, I don't even know how to put it, when you know certain things, or when you're in certain situations, or when you're younger, and you don't have, like, a family or parent backbone to, like, protect you, religious organizations really aren't safe. Like, I even remember some months back when I was still on the West Coast, I was constantly running into this priest dude who would call himself quote unquote helping people. He tried to do the usual manipulative stuff where they're like, oh, you just don't want help and you're not ready for change, because I wouldn't be a living sex slave for him. And he was always coming up to me telling me, you're a beautiful 13-year-old and I'm not going to let you tempt me and lure me into lust and all types of crazy, weird stuff. There's even this one situation where he claimed he was going to give me something to eat, but then somebody had asked me if I wanted a PB&J sandwich, which I can't really eat bread, but that's not even the point. And then he was like, oh yeah, never mind, there goes your dinner. And it's not like I asked him for something, but it's still like it was just so fake and bull crappy. Which is another thing as well. When religious organizations see you as, like, somebody who needs something, this is just how people are in general, really. People are really just like this in general. But, like, religious people, or religion has made people hate God because they claim that they believe in stuff and they claim that they're supposed to be a certain way, that they're supposed to care and help people, but they don't. And so to get back to the point, religious people often mention how, like, people want to come use them for their kindness and for God, and people want to come make them feel bad. And it's like, I personally don't like this idea that people have when they feel like, if they just feel like my life situations aren't ideal, even if I don't see myself as being a quote-unquote victim or being in a bad situation, if they feel that way, just like how people are in general, if other people feel that you need help, then they're going to treat you funny. Just like when I was in the Ramco situations, which I mention pretty often, that people treat you like crap in every situation, but in every situation they have a new excuse to do so. Then, like, a lot of religious people talk about how people want to be victims and people want you to feel bad for them. And that's another thing, too, that I can mention. Something else that I've realized is that, like, when I was, maybe, like, I don't know, 14 more so, I started looking into more deliverance and self-help type stuff because I wanted to focus more on trying to fix my different issues. And, like, I definitely found a lot of people that talked about things that I had realized, but I had never heard anybody else mention. Like, I don't even know how to explain it, but this probably isn't going to come out right at all or make sense, but something else that I also have thought about a lot recently is that, like, a lot of things may not even apply to me, but I really don't know. Because it's like, the way religious people talk about homeless people, or quote-unquote homeless people, and poor people, and the spirit of poverty, and how people want to be a victim and people don't want to fix their situations, and how people just want a mom and dad to save them, and they want somebody to come help and coddle them and all that stuff. Like, for one, the pull yourself up by your bootstraps narrative, I get it, but like, a lot of people go on rants like that because they know that people really don't give a crap and they don't either, and they know that they don't want to like help people. I don't know if this is even coming out right, but even though people often try to make me feel like these different types of insults apply to me and like I'm just not doing what I'm supposed to be doing and it's all my fault, it's like, I really don't know how to put it. I talk about these things often, but I don't know how to put it. It's like, does this stuff really even apply to me? Because it's like, even at 14, I'm like looking at stuff about people don't really want to get over their issues, but it's like, I realized, especially since escaping my previous situation, that getting over a lot of the issues I had, like, they were coping mechanisms for my abuse situation. And then also another thing as well, I often hear religious people talking about how like their videos aren't for kids or certain content isn't for kids, and they'll be talking about like SRA, human trafficking. It's like, if I wouldn't have started researching that type of stuff at 6, and especially like 8 to 10, I wouldn't have even been able to piece together stuff in my situation, my previous situation, or even things that are happening to people I know or have known, or even just different things that happen to me like now. I wouldn't even be able to like really piece it together, have the language for it. And it's like, people get SA'd starting in childhood, so like, I don't understand when people say that certain content they make isn't for kids, and they'll be like, if you're under a certain age, you shouldn't be watching this, and I don't know. And it's like, well, then should younger people not be reading the Bible? Like, I get that people don't want to be accused of anything, or they don't want people to say, oh, my kid's a minor, and this minister or whatever in the world, my kid was watching this, or they told my kid this. And it's like, people don't really want to like, they don't want to be accused of anything, so they're not like really helping the youth, like even youth 18 plus, how they should be. I don't know if this is even going to come out right, but it's like I don't know, it's just kind of weird to me how people will act like only a certain age should be like researching certain things about the Bible and researching certain things about what goes on in the world, even though the topics that are talked about are bad things that happen to people of all ages. I mean, crap, people get SA'd in the church, so it's like, it doesn't really make sense to me. But I don't know how else to put it, but it's kind of like, I don't know, do some of the things that I feel apply to me not apply to me? Because I remember, like, even at 14, I would be, like, watching videos, and I'd be like, yeah, I'm gonna start trying to make money, and I'm gonna not be lazy, and I'm not gonna let myself fall into, like, the spirit of poverty, which is generational. Also part of the curses of Deuteronomy 28, which I realized that people who, due to, like, subconscious hatred of their own people, due to, like, family trauma and stuff with their parents, they don't want to accept that the people of the Bible are really who the people of the Bible are. So, like, they don't understand that also the curses of Deuteronomy 28 are another part of, like, especially quote-unquote African Americans' poverty issues and different stuff, which could be a whole video of its own. But, like, I would just be listening to that stuff and, like, eating that stuff up, even in recent times. But I'm starting to realize that even though people will talk junk about how people aren't doing what they should be doing, and they want somebody to do everything for them, and the whole people want a mom and dad and you can bring a horse to the water but you can't make it drink type stuff that people go on rants about. But it's like, does this stuff even really apply to me? Because another thing is that most people raise themselves, and I've been in situations where I've been raising myself, and it's like, I kind of think a lot of these like narratives from like a lot of these like religious and biblical minister type people and whatever they call themselves, I feel like throughout the years it's been causing me to do a lot of beating myself up because I'm trying to figure out a lot of things on my own, which I definitely through the grace of God have been able to piece together a lot of things like by myself and with the help of God, and just being able to like recognize patterns and stuff like that. But it's kind of like, I feel like a lot of these, I don't like to call myself a victim unless I'm actually being victimized, but I notice a lot of religious people like label people who like, I don't know, have had or are having experiences like I am as quote unquote victims and victim complex people. And it's like, I kind of think I've just been like, I don't know, I don't know how to put it. I just feel like I've been like listening to a lot of victim blamey type things that have caused me to like beat myself up about like not being able to accomplish certain things that like most people, I don't even know how to put it. I'm not gonna lie, I don't know how to put it. But another thing too with that is like, I think when you believe in God really young, it causes more spiritual warfare. And also it's like things that I was already piecing together at 8 and 12 and stuff, which I swear when I talk about this stuff, I'm not trying to like act like I'm all that or like I'm I don't know, like it's not like a pride thing, but I'm just saying like things that I pieced together at 8 and 12 and stuff, trying to get over my own issues, especially when my life situations were like at some of its worst points. Like those things are hard to really, or these things are hard to really fix when you're not in the most ideal situation, especially when you're still actively being traumatized in ways. Then also another thing is that like some of the things that I've realized young, a lot of people don't piece together till after years of mistakes and divorces and kids and baby daddies, and they don't realize till like their 40s and maybe even older. And I also notice, and I swear I don't mean this in like a prideful way, when you notice these things young, for one, people are gonna do what people tell me all the time. Oh, you're just a child and you just think you know something because you want to be grown, and you don't want to listen to the quote unquote elders and all that bull crap. But it's like, it kind of seems like there just isn't really like anywhere for you to go to like be around like-minded people when you're a young person who like believes in God, especially when you're like don't have the best situations or family type stuff going on, I guess I could say, because like people already see you as bad. If you're homeless, you're a street kid, people already see you as like, oh, the mentally ill, lazy, homeless bum kid who's disrespecting their parents by not living with them, and they're just coming because they want something from us, and they're just going to come ask us for food, and they're just going to come ask us for water, and you're just not doing what you're supposed to do. And I don't know, I've talked about it before, but it's like, even if you don't see yourself necessarily as a victim, if other people see you as a victim, they will treat you horribly because of that, because they feel guilty, because they don't want to quote unquote help you, even if you don't feel like you really need whatever help they think you need. And like I've even seen people talk about how poor people and homeless people, and they just have pride and they have a place to go, but they just don't want to go because of pride and whatever that's supposed to mean. At first I thought they meant like going back to dangerous people, whether that's family or whoever your guardians were. But I think they really meant going to shelters, and that homeless people don't want to go to shelters due to pride. One, if you're under 18, you can't go to a shelter. You could lie about your age and go, but like, you're going to get treated so badly and be surrounded by so many sexual predator staff and other people who are staying in the shelter. It's not even worth it unless you want to get assaulted. I'm kind of laughing, but like, my nose is so stuffed up. But yeah, this video may be too long, but it's like, I don't know, I just feel like I've been listening to so much stuff throughout the years till present time that's like really kind of like insulting and kind of like attacky and blamey, and it's kind of like, does this stuff even apply to me? Because it's like, I don't know. Hopefully this made some type of sense. This is probably way too long to even go on TikTok. But, yeah, I don't know how else to put it. I really hope this made sense. But I just don't really think, like, I don't know. And then I've ran into so many situations since before I was even full-blown, visibly, quote-unquote, homeless, where, like, since like my parents didn't believe in God or the Bible, and I was going through so much spiritual warfare, especially just due to the environment I was in and all the stuff that was happening. Like, I would go to like minister type people, but nobody really wants to be involved, even if you're 18 plus, because like people. Okay, wait a minute. People will like claim, oh, I don't want to get involved, or I don't want to like do anything to help because you're under 18, but the reality is that the younger you are, the more people aren't going to want to get involved. Even if you're 18 plus, even if you're in your 20s, I feel, because like, they kind of feel like they're in a parent type role, and they're doing things and spending their time or wasting their time like catering to somebody and doing things that like your parents or family should be doing. And it's like, they may have their own kids, they may not. And then also that can put you in a lot of situations to like get desperate and end up around witches and get robbed when you already really don't have any money, and like end up like paying for wanting to pay for like mentorship type classes. Like, I was literally like busking, and that's how I made my money, because I couldn't work a job, and like I would try to like take mentorship type courses, and like I don't want to like accuse anybody of anything, because I know people will be like, what's that thing people say, touch not God's anointed, and don't like make people look bad, and this isn't like supposed to be an exposed thing anyways, but it's just like, I don't know, I feel like it was a lot of getting used, and when you talk about things like this, people say you have church hurt, but it's like, I didn't go to church anyways. I feel like if I did get any quote-unquote church hurt, I guess, if I wanted to call it that, it all came from like outside, or like, I don't know. I really don't know if this is gonna make any sense. But I just feel like I lost like a lot of money, and people knew I was in like not good situations, and I feel like not only did it cause like, okay, so like when people, how do I put this? People will say that like people feel entitled and they want like services and mentorship and stuff like that to be free. And it's like, I didn't expect it to be free, but it's kind of like, I don't know. I feel like people were using me for like money that I really didn't have. And it's just so much stuff with that. And then like, I could see how people like get tired of me after a while, because they may feel like I'm annoying, and they feel like they're trying to raise somebody else's kid, and people, in fact, I even remember this one lady who honestly I really believe was a witch looking back, but I even remember this one lady who was supposed to be like a minister deliverance type person. She even let me know off bat, I'm not your friend, I'm a minister. And I mean, I'm not gonna lie, that did like help with like setting boundaries, but I don't know, I think it kind of just goes back to the point, whether it's like a religious or biblical type thing or not, even if the person is like an atheist and they're just like, I don't know, I don't know, like a counselor or something. I don't know how to put it, but it's like there really is nowhere to go for help when you really need it. There really is no help, which I realized years ago. Part of why I had to escape my own Cash for Kids system situation. Other people have to escape their own situations because you have to save yourself. There is no help, and it's kind of like, I don't know, like, I don't want to say that I can't be extremely annoying, but I just feel like people don't and did not want to deal with what I had going on, and that my age doesn't make it any better, and that I kind of been like, I don't know, like an annoying burden, and then people would even say things like, well, you have to like believe that you'll be delivered, and you gotta really want to get better, and you don't really want to get better, but it's like, I wasn't, and I'm still not really, but my previous situation was obviously way worse when I was still like in the Cash for Kids system abuse, but it's kind of like, I don't really think that I didn't or don't want to get better and really want to like seek God and be delivered. I just feel like, especially when I was in my previous situation before quote unquote running away, like it's kind of hard to really get better while still actively being traumatized. But part of the reason that I started like seeking deliverance, other than the fact that I wanted it since I was 8, is that somebody told me that they felt like for me to be able to escape my situation, I needed to get delivered because they felt like the demons were like holding me back in my abuse situation, which really that wasn't even it. I just needed to get far away enough, but that's a whole nother story, to be honest. But I feel like I've just gotten better with a lot of things since running away in general, in that I don't know if it's what it is, but like deliverance never really did work for real. Like, I feel like maybe different things work for different people. I think I've talked about this before, that like everything doesn't work for everybody, and you can end up like in cycles. Like, people talk about people that are quote unquote witchcraft minded because they're always chasing, kind of like the True Yashua, always chasing the sign and running after deliverance ministers and running after courses and classes and going across the country to go to these different deliverance type concerts, which I'm not saying that like that's necessarily a bad thing, but this is how a lot of people in like the faith, I guess I could say, talk about it. And I totally can't understand how people can be witchcraft minded. Plenty of people talk about this and how like they can end up in a bad situation, even chasing like some sketchy people trying to get delivered and all that, and end up gaining some demons trying to get delivered. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I've ended up in like some witchcraft kundalini type situations that I've had to get out of, chasing like, well, it's like, I don't know though, because then it's kind of like after a point I was like, well shoot, I mean, do I even like really have a demon, or just like how I am? Because it's kind of like, well, I keep ending up in these situations, I keep losing money that I don't have, I don't even have a job, and it's kind of like, I don't know. But I don't know like what else to say about it. And then it's kind of like maybe I'm just weird and I just expected like some stuff, but especially when people talk about like people like wanting to like have a parent, or wanting people to like what's that thing, you can bring a horse to the water but you can't make it drink, and people want to use somebody. And I still feel like that stuff really doesn't apply to me. Like, maybe I'm, like, letting people's insults that are supposed to be geared towards certain people, especially much older people, like, maybe I'm letting those things, like, get to me that really don't apply to me. Because it's very obvious from, like, the thing that people talk about where they say, oh, I'm not expecting people this age to be watching my videos. So it is very obvious that, like, people are acting like younger people who believe in God. What was I saying? It is very obvious that, like, a lot of people aren't expecting people like me to be, like, viewing their videos. But I just feel like it's so much different stuff. And even just things that I've been going through with, like, having to, like, do the usual. Like, not seeing myself as a kid until recently. But then also knowing that, like, I'm gonna get older, and then that causes a lot of issues, because then it's like, it's really confusing. Even though most people do raise themselves, to be honest, it still is really confusing. Because especially, as I've talked about before, street kids aren't seen as kids. The moment you become full-blown visibly homeless, you're automatically seen as a man or woman for weird sexual reasons, and just because. I think it also makes people feel better when they feel like you need help, if they just see you as, like, a lazy grown man or grown woman, even though you're not a grown man or grown woman. But I don't feel like it really makes a difference, because people typically first become homeless by themselves somewhere from infancy or 7 to 16. And so, like, the same homeless people who are homeless in their 50s have most likely been homeless typically since they were 13, 16, 18, 20, 14, whatever. So it's kind of, like, really confusing, but it's kind of like, there definitely has been a lot of points in my life, some points more than others, where, like, I really did want, like, a parent figure. Not like I really wanted to, like, force somebody to do what my parents should be doing, but, like, just, like, someone to help give me advice. But it kind of makes me think back to, like, when I was in my Ramco situation, and this one girl who was my age, of course, so it's like, she definitely shouldn't have to feel like she has to help, but she was like, your abuse situation is too much for me, it stresses me out because I don't know how to help. And I feel like that's another part with it. And then also the fact that people are still parenting themselves, even in their 40s, from not having a dad or their parents not really liking them. And people still have their own trauma and wounds that they're still dealing with. And so, like, people can't really help you when they're still helping themselves. This is already really, really long, but it's kind of like, I really hope this makes sense. And it's not too often where I've met too many young people who believe in God, but their parents don't. Like, typically, it's something that you're being forced to do, which is also another reason that like, religious organizations will know. If you come to a church, but you don't have parents, they automatically assume you must need something or want something, because young people only come when they're being forced to come. But, yeah, like, I know this is something that, like, a lot of church people and people in the faith would be mad about, because it's like, whenever you talk about these types of, well, I've never really heard anybody talk about this type of issue specifically, but whenever you talk about the issues of religious organizations, people will say stuff like, you have a Jezebel spirit and you just want to tear down the church. People say stuff like that, but it's like, some people really do have, like, real questions and real issues to address. But it's like, I don't know. And then it's kind of like, well, am I the bad guy? Am I just, like, I don't know, like, I don't even know how else to put it. Yeah. I don't know what else to say about it. I don't really think I can explain it any better than I've already tried to. It's kind of like, does this stuff that I felt like applies to me really even apply to me. That often is very blamey and guilt trippy type stuff. Cause like, I swear, like, I was literally just, I'm trying to think of another example. Okay, like for example, so I talk about pretty often how due to generational stuff and my my situations, I had sexual addiction and marine spirits and all that. Well, I was obviously like born with them, but especially since 4, but I was really demonized at 8 to 11 or something like that. And so it was kind of like I remember watching videos that would talk about how people just don't want to get better. And if you really want it to be delivered, then you be delivered. My voice is going to be cracking so much. But if you really want it to be delivered, you be delivered. And you just like it. And I would just be listening to that stuff. Even, not really in recent time. Because, like, since running away, it's been easier to get over a lot of that stuff. Especially since, like, just different things with, like, sexual addiction and then being homeless and how, like, you... Well, I mean, if you're really, really demonized, you could probably do that outside, but I wasn't that down bad. So that could be a whole other video, though, about, like, how running away and being homeless has actually helped me with those types of, with dealing with that type of demonization and even coping mechanisms. But anywho, to get back to the point, it's like I'd be sitting around listening to this stuff that was, like, very guilt trippy, and I guess I could say quote unquote victim blamey, but it's like, does this stuff really even apply to me? For real? Because it's like, I don't know how else to put it, it's a lot of being told to do stuff that you can't really do with no help, or you could do, but it's like, be made to feel like you should accomplish things quicker. And I feel like especially dealing with only recently realizing that I was a kid since escaping my abuse situation, because I finally wasn't like in constant trying to help myself and help other people who things are being done to, and be made to feel like a little, oh my gosh, my voice is going to be cracking a lot, a little grown woman. But it's like realizing the different crazy standards that have been put on me throughout my life, and even other people I know till this day, especially being homeless, because street kids aren't seen as kids, and so people act like I should have like accomplished things that people would never expect from anybody my age and even older who lives with their parents or has parents in a support system, which I have plenty of videos about that, but it's kind of like, I don't know. I think I've just been like struggling a lot and trying to like fight a lot of things and figure a lot of things out on my own, but it's kind of like I just noticed more and more the different weird standards that I've had placed on myself till this day and throughout my life from different groups, biblical and not, and just different people in society, I guess I could say, that are standards that people really have trouble meeting. And I just feel like I'm noticing that I've let too many people put a lot of stuff in my head about what I shoulda, coulda, woulda. I don't know what else to say. Something that I could throw in a little last minute. I don't even know if this is too long to go on TikTok. I don't know if anybody would even watch this. But I remember that, like, 2 of my abusers, they believed that they were God. And one of them would always talk about, like, how, what was it? How I may believe in, like, God and all the fairy tale, quote-unquote, schizo stuff now, but, like, once I get older, I'm not going to believe in all that stuff anymore. And then, like, I remember, this was even up until recent times before I escaped my cash for kids system abuse and my family system, where, like, my mom and, well, really none of my relatives, none of them believed in God. I didn't even really consider myself a Christian even at that point in time. Not like with what the label often means, because I know I know the pagan roots and the Freemason roots, and also I knew how, like, due to different things that I had found out and researched, that, like, my views were very different from the mainstream, like, religious, churchy type people. But anywho, they would, like, always talk about how they didn't like Christians, and at 12, at 12, even up to recent times before me escaping, like, my mom will, like, hit me and stuff for believing in God and for reading the Bible, and I wasn't allowed to read the Bible or any of that stuff. And it's kind of like, when I was kind of like, but I remember this one specific instance of this when I was 12, then I think another one when I was like 14 or whatever, and it's like, I don't know, there's not really anywhere to go to when you believe in God from a young age. And there's also that, and I feel like it causes a lot of issues. In fact, I even knew this one girl, although I met her on IG, and, like, she was also really smart. Her family system was abusive. Well, I don't really know how abusive they were, but I do know there was at least domestic violence. I couldn't really say how much her and her siblings got abused, but I know we would talk about how like her dad was abusive to her mom. I forgot that I probably can't say too much on here, and so, like, she's somebody else who's most likely anointed or prophetic, and would be labeled off as neurodivergent or something these days. So she was really smart. We would talk about the Anunnaki. We actually met behind a post she made about how CPS traffics kids. And she was a little bit older than me, I think. So I think that, like, I was 14 or something like that. And she was 16, 15. And her parents didn't really believe in God. I remember she lived in Jersey. We kind of had a falling out, even though we had so much in common, because, like, our situations kind of clashed because we both had a lot going on. But I remember she really wanted to get deliverance because she had sexual addiction, which is really common. That's the real pandemic childhood, or quote-unquote childhood, because I personally don't believe there's a such thing as a child or a childhood, and I don't really believe that anybody who's older than, like, 9 or 10 is a quote-unquote child. But I'll just say youth sexual addiction is the real pandemic, and typically it starts somewhere from age 4 to 8, and that's when you become full-blown addicted to corn and the M word or whatever. And also, she was turned out, probably due to trauma or generational stuff, but that's what it comes from. So she also liked girls, and I remember she wanted to be delivered really badly, but she didn't really know where to go to get it or how to get it, and she was, like, losing her faith because of that. But, like, there's nowhere to really go when, like, you're young and you already believe in God and the Bible, and your parents and family don't. I don't know if that was, like, a good example. But yeah. I don't know what else to say about that. I think that was it. But it's kind of like, I get it though, because, like, whenever you're in any bad situation, people don't want to get involved. And another thing is that people sometimes say it's because your age if you're under 18, but as I always mention, people who say stuff like that will disappear before you even get to your, like, mid-teen years. And they wouldn't help you if you were 20. But it's still also kind of like, I mean, what would people really do? But I don't know. I just feel like there's, like, it's just all confusing because society pushes so much pressures and standards on you, but you don't really get, like, taught or showed how to do it, how to do certain things, because the people pushing the standards probably don't know how either. That wasn't even really supposed to be like the main point of the video, but that's also like something I think about when it comes to like these topics and how like, I don't know, it's just really not the easiest. Like, one thing that I realized is also really funny is like mainstream religion is definitely a death cult, but it's kind of like people make getting to heaven and being saved sound a lot easier than it actually is as well. I realized that like some years ago, and I was like, you know what? People are lying like heck. People are lying like heck. That's what I realized as well. But yeah, I just realized more and more, especially with like really hearing about and experiencing how religious organizations see and view homeless people, and also the racial stuff with like living in mostly white areas every now and then. And it's kind of like, I've really realized that I've never had the mainstream views, which I kind of already been knew, even at 9, but I've realized that more. And I've never had the mainstream situation, and that I would not be allowed or liked in religious organizations for many reasons. One, like, due to the fact that I know that, like, demonization comes from trauma and abuse, and religion literally is, like, one of the things that people, especially in the South, often use to okay abuse of all forms, especially of youth, and ageism and all, like, SA and all that stuff. Like, people literally claim that, like, one of the commandments of the Bible is to take your kids through MK Ultra, pretty much. To take your kids through MK Ultra, SRA. So, like, due to, like, how I view my views on that, and the fact that most people who believe the Bible believe that abuse is mandatory, and that MK Ultra, trauma-based mind control, is mandatory, that I am not and would not be like in religious organizations. And of course, since they see me as the quote-unquote bad, fast, and grown child, I'm one of the people who they view as needing these types of mandatory abuse, discipline type things, because I'm quote-unquote bad. And yeah, and then it's like, when you notice these things, then people, because the Jezebel term is so popular these days, then people want to like label you off as like a Jezebel who wants to like, what's the thing people say? You want to Miriam the mic, and you want to you want to pull a Miriam and all that stuff. But it's like, religion just isn't safe. I don't really know what to say about it. It's really just not safe. Which I'm sure people already know that. But it's really funny because it's kind of like being like, I don't know, some type of outcast castaway or something, realizing how much I am not like the status quo for so many reasons. Like, I remember when I was in Oregon, I was kind of talking about this earlier, but I realized I never finished the sentence. I was in Oregon, I was walking down the street, I wasn't even technically homeless at this point in time, and there was this homeless guy who was asleep on the porch of a church, and the preacher got mad at him and hit him in the head with the door. And while I was walking down the street, he was like, "Is this your friend? Tell him to move." And that's something that I ran into a lot with, like, these mostly white areas. And it's like, why do they always assume that some random grown man is my quote-unquote friend? I don't even like that part alone with that. But it's also just really horrible. But of course, like, something that I've learned in these types of places is that they already know that most of the quote-unquote black people there dumped out foster kids, kicked out runaways, or they came from another state to be homeless for whatever reason. And they already know that, like, the quote-unquote minorities typically can't really afford to live there. So in these types of places, they automatically assume that if you're quote-unquote black, especially if you're young, then you're homeless. So there's that part alone. But then it's also like, I've had a couple situations happen like that where like different white preachers and store owners like seeing some random grown man who's like sleeping, being like, "Is this your friend?" Tell him, and it's like, that's not really the point though. I'm just thinking about that and kind of ranting about that. But I will say though, still, point is, like stuff like that. In fact, the same preacher another day, because the youth resource center was close to here. That's why I would be near this church sometimes, because I would go to the youth resource center for like dinner, because they had those on the West Coast, which really shocked me because America does not have many youth resources due to ageism and adultism, especially not in red states in the South, because people feel like, oh, well, homeless youth just need to be sent back home. But anyhow, what else was I going to say with that? Oh, yeah, I remember now. So, I was walking down the sidewalk, and I was getting ready to go home, and then this preacher dude saw me. He was like, "Oh, we're not open right now, hurry up," and slammed the door in my face. I never would even think about going in there to most likely just get molested. Anywho, I don't even think I can say that word actually. But like, I was just walking by, and he assumed I was about to come in, and even though he just let in multiple groups of what seemed to be rich white people, he like tried to pull the whole, "Oh, we're not open yet," and slammed the door in my face and locked it. And that's also really racial, aside from the classism. And I ran into stuff like that all the time in the West Coast. Just racial things like that, of like not being allowed in places, but if they feel like you're homeless, or you give off what I like to call the orphan energy, which is really what makes people accuse you of being homeless, then they'll just use that as an excuse and say, "Oh, it's not because of racial stuff," as if anybody cares anyways. It's because they're homeless, I think. But, yeah. Then another thing, too, as well, is that religious people have so much stuff to say about homeless people. But what they don't get is that with the coming NAZIS system, all poor people and melanated people are seen the same. If you're dark-skinned, you're seen no different from a homeless person. If you're what higher-level Caucasians or high-level white supremacists will call quote-unquote white trash, you're seen no different from any other poor person or homeless person. And aside from that, what they like to label off as poor, homeless, and broken, the spirit of poverty, they seem to not get that some people actually feel like it's their true calling from the Most High to live outside and live naturally and not have pride in vain things. But I'm sure they would consider that a mental illness because they can never be that committed themselves. And then lastly, why is it that Diddy and, what was that dude's name? The dude that was obviously a Freemason. I've never watched any of his videos. Like, you can tell by looking at people when they're a Freemason and when they're turned out. Well, that's not even really the thing, the turned out thing. That's a part of it. But you can tell when they're chomos and all that. But why is it that Diddy and, what was it, TD Jakes, I think? Why is it that they're children of God and don't speak on their names, but poor people, homeless people, and the supposedly bad, traumatized kids, and the supposed victim complex people? Not that I don't know that a victim complex can actually be a real thing, but why is it that those people are the devil, but like Diddy's a child of God? Why is that? And don't speak on Diddy's name like, I don't even know what I was about to say. But, yeah, but like religious people are literally talking about some, we can't judge Diddy and don't speak on TD Jakes because he's called by God, and people are ruining the church by and it's like, and then I could say so much about that, but that would have to be another video because it's probably going to be way too long for TikTok if I edit all this together. But yeah, so, and then I think as a side note, I also think that I've become like pretty scared of like people who are in mainstream religion. Now, I've been known that religion is the New World Order anyways, but it's like, something else I forgot to mention is that I've also ran into like, situations where people, even though I'm not even like into this, or like I work really hard to avoid fornication, but shoot, I don't really know anybody or too many people my age anyways, so there's also that. And I'm like not even really in the situations for that. But it's like I've never been the type for this type of behavior, but I've also ran into things with like religious guys who of course have issues themselves, and that's why their mind automatically goes here. But like assuming or seeming to assume that like I'm one of those girls that likes to get guys in trouble, so that also makes them want to avoid me. But like, that's not even what I've ever been into. I've never even been that type of person for that type of stuff. I also will say that realistically, somebody shouldn't even be able to get you in trouble, but I'm not even going to go into all that because I just really was kind of like upset about the fact that that's even where people's mind goes. And I would really say that people, I mean, for one, I have good discernment, so I already know that, like, especially where I'm at now, most of the guys have perversion issues. And to be truthfully honest, in the places where I wasn't constantly having people trying to sexually assault me, oh, I don't think I can, trying to SA me, or crap, hold up, I accidentally turned the screen off. Or trying to, harassing me. It was in places where there was, like, so much racial and classist stuff to where, like, somebody would be scoffed at for even looking in my direction. Those were the only types of places where I didn't have, like, constant essay type stuff and just weird stuff going on. So, yeah, there was that. But it's kind of like, I don't know, it's just not safe. Like, I've even been put in, like, some dangerous situations recently behind, well, I can't even say it's dangerous. It's kind of funny. It's kind of a funny situation. But I don't know, it even makes me think about, like, the different quote-unquote let me help you lunatics that I've met throughout the years. Like, I know one of the first memorable ones was one that police or law enforcement forced me around, which the definition of a let me help you lunatic is kind of hard to explain, but I made up the term in 2022, and it's kind of like people who were, I guess, a form of maybe a Marine Kingdom agent, but overall they're really manipulative and reactive, abusive. They're also pretty culty. They pretend to want to help people because they're predatory, and it either makes them feel better, they feel like it makes them look good, they feel like they have to do it to work their way into heaven. Weird sexual reasons, stuff like that. But the first one that I was forced around by law enforcement, she was a voodoo cult type person, but they often have some type of religious backing. In fact, I think I've only ever met one that didn't, and he just had like some white savior sexual predator type stuff. But honestly, a lot of them have like some white savior type complexes to them, but that's not even really the point. The point is that I've even recently, how do I even put this? I don't know. Just the whole Miss S situation that I've talked about before. Although I would say that the elderly lady that she robbed and took advantage of and abused and did all types of weird covert essay type stuff to while running around saying she was a real woman of God. I would say that honestly, the J lady got the bad end of the stick because I already knew that Miss S was what she was, so I avoided her. But it's like stuff like that, and the elderly lady who's disabled, the J lady, met this abusive Miss S lady because she was sleeping behind the church. And it even goes into the thing that I talk about all the time, which is that safe and healthy people do not help people. The people who are willing to help people are sexual predators like chomos or whatever, and then what I like to call let me help you lunatics and white savior complex type people. Because only Miss S even noticed or cared about, or supposedly cared about, I guess, the J lady. I remember Miss S even talked about how she didn't feel like the church was doing what they were supposed to do because they knew that there was a handicapped, quote-unquote, elderly lady sleeping behind the church and they didn't do anything. And so she called herself being the helper and completely terrorized the lady. But still, these are the types of people that actually notice when people like need something. And it's like, it's not that I expect something out of people, because then when you talk about the issues of society, people start to feel subconscious guilt and they start to get mad at you, and they'll call you a conspiracy theorist. They'll just call you depressing or schizo or whatever because they feel like you're making them look bad and feel bad about themselves. Not that I really care, but people say the whole people think the world owes them thing. But it's like, I don't know, it's just all really weird. People are just really weird, and I don't really think there's any other way to like describe it, but it's all really interesting. Okay, shoot, this video is about to be super long, I can already tell. I completely forgot about this, and I think it was at the back of my head, and that's why I kept mentioning the whole thing where I was kind of thinking, am I just like listening to things that don't really apply to me, that are really blamey? And I've even like had heard like people who I guess are atheists as well say things similar to this, which is interesting because karma is still a spiritual principle. But the idea that like your life situations are like quote unquote karma or reaping, which I mean I totally get that. I even understand how like due to legal rights and spiritual laws and generational curses, even the things that happen to you as a baby are legal rights. And I do get that like everybody's not necessarily trying to blame people that maybe don't have control over their circumstances, but I totally understand how like things are reaping and sowing. But it's also kind of like listening to stuff like that throughout my life is also, I feel, kind of confused me about a lot of things. And I think it could be, I get like how that is true, but I feel like there should be more explaining with stuff like that, because a lot of people already pretty often become quote-unquote atheists because they're mad at God due to things that have and are happening to them, and they feel like God hates them, and that's why they're being tortured or trafficked or whatever in the world. And that's why I think about a lot, like, how much of this stuff really even applies to me that I've been listening to for the past however many years. And, like, I don't know what else to say about it. But I also feel like, especially with the homeless and quote unquote homeless and quote unquote broke people hate inside, people often like push narratives like that about how that what's that thing that people say, one bad decision. And but it's like, with the fact that most people become homeless in quote unquote childhood, whatever that really means, I couldn't even really say that there really was much decisions to be made in the beginning. But then it's also kind of like the homeless term is thrown around so much these days. And like, I mean, people will look at a nomad who works as a seasonal fisher in Alaska and travels to Europe and stuff, and they'll call that person homeless because it's really jealousy. That's the issue. And I've already mentioned the whole thing with people that feel like it's their life's calling to live naturally and not be materialistic. So it's kind of like there's that as well, and people will like just try to find ways to blame people for their supposed situation, or at least how other people view their quote unquote situation. But it's like, I'd be listening to stuff like that, and it's kind of like, I don't know, I just feel like, well, I did definitely find a lot of people that have pieced together things similar to what I have and have helped me like piece together more things. I still often do feel like I'm listening to things that may kind of be doing more harm than good, because like, I could definitely say that when I was preparing to escape my situation, I had a lot of ideas I had put together about what I was going to be able to do and how things were going to be, and all the stuff that I was going to be able to fix and figure out. And that really wasn't how it was, which that's not even anybody's fault if I'm listening to them. I mean, kind of like with the people that were telling everybody to go back to Africa. And then people were going to Africa and had no money and no way to make money, and then they were getting stuck and ending up in a bad situation. And they were having to come back. Like, that's not necessarily the fault of the video maker, because people, like, make their own decisions and form their own, like, opinions or whatever in the world. But it's kind of like, I kind of feel like I've just, I don't know, I feel like I've gotten more confused. And I don't feel like the societal pressures, due to how people view me in my situation, I mean people in general, not just like religious people or whatever. I do feel like people and other people I know who are in situations, especially when it comes to like stuff with their parents and family, or being a street kid, I feel like all the different societal pressures and standards just are really confusing. And I kind of feel like I've been doing a lot of beating myself up that hasn't helped. And I kind of feel like if I wouldn't have listened to some of the stuff I've listened to about like whether you really want to be free and all that, I probably could have like figured out things that could have really helped me with a lot of things sooner, but I don't really know. I'm just thinking. I don't even know if this is really going to make any sense. Okay, crap. I keep forgetting stuff. This also goes into something else that I'm pretty sure I've talked about before, which even goes into the whole you have to save yourself thing that I had to accept years ago. This all goes along with that as well. And another thing is that I realized that realistically, nobody could really answer the questions that I had. And there wasn't anybody there isn't anybody that I could really go to for certain things. And so there's that. And then it's like when you do talk about certain things, people like for example, for whatever weird reason, so many people in the deliverance space have cognitive dissonance and are running around holding hands, skipping through the tulips with chomos that not only have and are still essaying them, but are also essaying other people, or they just like hold a deep hatred subconsciously for True Yasharel due to stuff that their family and community did to them that will even make them not want to accept that True Yasharel is the people group that it is. But they'll still have cognitive dissonance for their abusive parents or family or whatever, and they'll still talk to them even though they still don't like them. And crap, there was a point I was supposed to be getting at with that. I don't even remember what it was, I'm not gonna lie. But there was a point I was supposed to be getting at. It was supposed to be something about like how a lot of these people, they can't really talk to somebody about getting over trauma or even being in the midst of trauma, whether that's like family stuff, the human cash cow and cash for kids system, Ramco, Traff, whatever in the world. They can't really talk to somebody about that or give somebody advice on that because they're still cupcaking with their abusers themselves because they feel like that's what forgiveness is and that's what they have to do. And of course, people don't like when I talk about these things because I'm quote unquote just a child who doesn't respect elders. And so, of course, I'm going to say stuff like that. But it's kind of like, I don't know, there's just so much I could say about it, but this is going to be probably way too long. I don't even know if I'm going to have storage space for this. And this definitely isn't going to be able to go on TikTok, I don't think. But, but yeah, it's like also, people, I think a lot of people expect so much out of people. Like, I remember somebody talked about years ago, I don't know if it was Stephen Darby or somebody else, but how, like, a lot of the pastors and ministers have corn addictions. A lot of them have set of statistics type things that they don't have a close friend. People come to them for help, but they don't have anyone to go to when they need something and stuff like that. And I think it's all more the reason why there's really, like, you really just, like, can't expect stuff out of people, but it also, like, it seems that it, like, even if people claim that you can, like, get help from them for something, they're probably lying, and I don't know, it's kind of like, society is like CPS, like a human trafficking organization that has kids homeless, and some people who are honestly ignorant or either just don't give a crap pretend that there's like this system put in place to help people with whatever, but there really isn't, and it's kind of like a fake aid. I don't know, it's like taxes. It's kind of like this comment that somebody had left me about how Americans talk so much junk about homeless and poor people, and how Americans seem to not get that the point of paying taxes is so that the money can go back to the society and helping with like what's that stuff called? I don't know, organizations that are supposed to help people, but Americans feel like poor people shouldn't benefit from taxes, which they never really were anyways. And this was something that somebody from Europe had said to me, and kind of like how somebody claims that in Germany foster kids can end up homeless, although I don't know how true that is. There's street kids everywhere, so I feel like that's bullcrap. And of course, like, not all the street kids are foster kids, which is a whole other video, but like, anywho, that's what this makes me think about, because it's like, people put their money and hope and faith and time into like really any organization, and then like they claim to give back but they really don't, and then it's like there's not enough people working together for the giving back to actually work out. Because like, like you see in like the New Testament, the book that mainstream Christianity pretends is like the only book of the Bible, well, the only books of the Bible, and that the Old Testament is like evil or something. But you see in the New Testament that like people are leaving money at the disciples' feet and all that type of stuff, and people are working together, and they're supposed to be like giving the not the disciples, the apostles. I'm all over the place, but people are supposed to be working together to like get all that stuff to work out, and like helping people get boats to go preach here, and I don't know, like take somebody's horse or whatever to go preach there, stuff like that. People working together to get things to work out. But of course, religion caused all the division, which is what Paul and Jesus warned about, which is why religious people either flip around stuff that Paul and Jesus said, or they just don't like Paul especially. But yeah, it's kind of like that, but on like a large scale. I don't know if this is coming out right at all, but it's all really weird. It's like paying taxes and then wondering where all the tax money's going. And it's all going to that land in Northeast Africa with all the Swedish, Irish, and German people running around. But yes, I think maybe that's it. Hopefully, because I don't think I have any more storage space for anything else.